Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story TV and the Her Story podcast. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Hi, I'm Debra Roberts. I'm a conversation expert and the developer of the Relationship Protocol Communication Model. And that model extends from the boardroom all the way to the kitchen table. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, so an LCSW. I'm also a business consultant and a trauma consultant, so I'm the full package. And I have a lot of experience in organizations. I've worked with children who were in crisis, a runaway program. I've worked in poverty, legal settings. I've worked in health and mental health settings. I've had a private practice for many years. And I've also been working in businesses and dealt a lot with traumatic situations. Excuse me. And so what I found in all of those different experiences that I had, that the common denominator is that regardless of the setting, the circumstances, the challenges, that when I was able to teach people how to communicate, how to express what they need, how to resolve their conflicts, build trust, communicate in a way that they can feel heard, everything changed. The quality of their life changed, the relationships changed, the trajectory of a relationship or even an interaction. Meaning, when we learn how to approach an interaction, how to continue and navigate something, and how to not engage in that, that hustle, that fight, how to have differences and know how to communicate about them. It makes such a difference in the quality of our lives and the quality and depth of our relationships. And so when I realized that what I was doing was different, because to be honest, for about 20 years, I kept hearing these wonderful comments about my work, and I had a huge private practice and a big consulting business, but I didn't realize that what I was teaching was so different than what other people were, how they were working. And when I realized it, I did a lot of due diligence and I found out that my work was different, that I was teaching the fundamentals, just the basics of how to have a conversation. And here in the United States and probably all over the world, we don't teach people how to talk to each other, how to resolve differences, how to get along, and how to be heard. And so I started doing this. I ended up writing and writing and writing. And I created this model, the Relationship Protocol Communication Model. There are 6 components to the communication model. The first 2 key elements, what they do is they teach you how to have a perspective for being in a healthy relationship and or to have a productive interaction, whether it's with someone that's in a personal relationship or a business relationship, family, friend, whomever. And the 4 steps are the how-tos. How do you have conversations? It gives you the fundamental ways of having conversations. So I ended up writing my book. And I guess one of the things that really was so shocking to people around me was that while I was excited about the book, I thought it could be a download that could be sent out without me being involved in it. That the relationship protocol was that good that everybody would want it. I didn't really understand that I had to be a part of it. So unfortunately, there was a big delay for a long period of time because I couldn't get out of my own way. I'm a private person. I wasn't interested in being in the public eye. I wasn't interested in being public at all. So I didn't want my name on my book. I didn't want my picture on my book. And I delayed the process. Eventually, I caved, put my name on it, put my picture on, but I'm not kidding. I think I delayed the process for more than a year. It was more than a year, if I admit it. And when I look at it now, the picture on my book is this 1-inch black and white shot. And I understand it's a relationship book. I had to put my name on it. I get it. I couldn't get out of my own way. But I think what started to happen was I realized that what I'm talking about is important. And what I'm talking about is something that can be duplicated and can be received by people in all settings. And that's part of what my drive was. So it kind of became a mission for me in a small way back then. Now, I'll tell you in a moment more about my current mission. But that mission became, wow, this is a little bigger than me. It's not just about Debra Roberts going out there. It's about the relationship protocol. It's about the capacity for reaching more people. And I'm a social worker at heart. I believe in grassroots stuff. So I was excited at the possibilities. And that's where all of this started for me. Once I started to realize that what I was saying was so important and it can change lives and it can make a difference. I'm talking about how to show up in a committed way, whether it's in a close, important, intimate relationship, or whether it's at work. How do we show up to build trust and so that people can connect with us and know they can count on us and feel secure in our interactions? And how do we turn towards others, showing up in a way that's relational? If I'm upset with you, I might turn away. If I'm distracted, I might turn away. But I'm also talking about bigger issues now, that turning away can have to do with biases, that I can be turned away from you because I don't like you, I don't like the department you work in, I don't like your sexuality, your race. And when I am behaving that way, I'm turned away. And I teach people that it's important to understand when you're dealing with someone who cares about you and wants to get along with you for the sake of the company, for the sake of the relationship, for the sake of your marriage, whatever it is, and they can switch and turn towards. We all do that. We all can be distracted or annoyed at things. But people who are invested in their negativity and want to stay there, they're turned away. And a group of people who are turned away can cause a lot of damage. And that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about now. I'm trying to help everybody understand and give words and language to how we communicate and how we can show up. And when sometimes you're just not going to make a difference. You can't reach people that don't want to be reached. We all know that. If we want to change and we understand that we have the power to show up in our best, as our best self and communicate in a way that people can hear us and that they want to figure out a way to communicate with us. So my mission, bigger than I am, is to make the world a kinder, more communicative place. And to do that, we need to be kind and we need to be able to talk about our differences. And these days, I know that that's a tough mission, but I think we can do it. I came from a family where my mother was a third grade teacher when I was growing up. And she worked in a minority area. She worked in a very, very low income area. And every year I would spend the day with her, a few days, with her students. I was the same age as her third graders, so I was 9 or 10 years old, even starting going there younger. And she would always be so loving to these children and so kind and respectful. And I remember her saying to me from a very young age, everybody's important and these kids are important and we're going to give them a little extra love because that's what we're going to do here. And she just made it a normal part of what I was supposed to understand about human interaction and how we love and respect each other. My father was a salesman, and when I was graduating college, when he came to my graduation, he looked so upset. And I said to him, what's going on? and my parents told me that my father had gotten fired from his job. He was a very proud man. He had become the national sales manager of a company, and he was proud of that position because he had been a salesman for them and he worked his way up the ladder. What he found was that a big corporation took over the company, and they wanted him to treat the salesmen differently, treat them like they're numbers, treat them like they don't really matter that much. And he wasn't going to do that. He refused to do that. And in so doing, he got fired. He felt that these were my peers, but these are people who are working hard, they're doing their job, they're motivated to get things done. But the corporation wanted more numbers, more action, and even though they had a great year that year with my father in his last few years working for them, it didn't matter to them. They didn't like that he was still friends with these people, that he treated them like human beings, that he wasn't looking to be the authoritative personality. And back then, we're talking many decades ago, he was in many ways ahead of his time. He wanted to treat them like human beings. He wanted to create a positive culture. So combined, realizing as I've gone through this process and learned about myself in the process, I realized that I came from parents who have influenced my model and influenced, of course, my way of thinking. But it's really important to understand that at the root of the relationship protocol communication model, it is about kindness and it is about treating people with respect and learning how to listen to each other. What I've also done now is I've expanded. And I've taken this model, I've brought it into the workplace. So now I created a course that I'm so proud of. I poured my heart into it, as I like to say. It is an 8-lesson online program for the workplace. I call it the trifecta. The trifecta is, well, let me explain. So in order to be an effective communicator, you need to have self-awareness. So you need to be aware of who you are. You need to understand the value of self-awareness and how to communicate with others in a way where you're paying attention. Even the best communication skills won't matter if I'm not aware of how I show up in the world and how I impact people. So I teach in this program how to increase your self-awareness and why it's so important. What I also teach is the relationship protocol model, but I've changed it. I've created some tweaks. It's the same 6 components, but these components are taught with a workplace culture in mind. So it's the relationship protocol at work. So you learn the basics of how to approach a conversation, whether it's from a leadership position or an employee position. And you learn how to build trust, how to demonstrate your commitment, deal with conflicts. And then the last part of the trifecta, which I think is really cool, is the master class. And the master class is all about coping. It's called Life Strategies for Wellness. I teach 5 coping skills, on-the-go coping skills for dealing with stress, dealing with overwhelm. What about if you have a lot of negative self-talk? How can you start to turn that around? I also talk about emotional triggers. So if you think of a full functioning human being and how we want to be in our relationships, how we want to show up at work, how we want to show up in life. If I can teach these organizations, nonprofit organizations, big, small companies, how to have these cultures where we can figure out a way to talk about our differences, to talk about conflicting topics, and to feel more confident and equipped to express what we need, we have a whole different ballgame going. And you have to know self-awareness. You have to have good, solid, fundamental communication skills like the relationship protocol and now the relationship protocol at work. And you have to be able to cope. Because what if in the course of the conversation or in the course of the day, you start to feel overwhelmed? It doesn't matter what a great communicator you are if you don't know how to self-soothe, if you don't understand what's going on and how to take better care of yourself. So it's super important to be able to be someone who can show up fully formed. And what this program does is it takes my years, my decades of being a clinician, and a business consultant, and a trauma consultant. Put it all together, and now I'm going to enter the workplace. This is new for me. You mentioned challenges. I don't fully see this as a challenge, even though it's a newer arena, but I do see it as interesting. I wake up every day and say, how can I serve on a deeper level? And I do believe that I am arriving at that deeper level by being able to reach more people, touch their lives, and make those changes. If we can become a world where people know how to talk to each other, just the basics, imagine what that would feel like and how we can all show up in a way that we can feel proud and we can connect on a deeper level. We can care about each other and be just the peaceful, kind place that we all deserve. So I hope you've enjoyed learning about me. I could talk about communication and the changes that I would love to see in the world and in our interactions one by one human being to the next. I can talk about it for a long time. So if you'd like to reach me, I have a website, therelationshipprotocol.com. I'm on LinkedIn at Debra Roberts, Debra Roberts, and I'm also on Instagram at The Relationship Protocol. So I hope to hear from you, and thank you again for the opportunity.
Yes, Debra, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, Gertrude. Thank you so much for having me.
Communication is everything. You know, right now we are faced with the war in Ukraine. The world is a little bit upside down, and a lot of conflict can be solved with dialogue. So, from your experience, what causes people to fail to communicate effectively?
Such a great question. Communication usually fails because we don't know what to say. We don't know how to start a conversation. And we don't know what to do once we're having the conversation if it starts to take a turn. If the person's getting upset or if we disagree with each other, everybody kind of holds their positions. And usually, no one knows how to navigate a conversation when it gets a little tense, or if we disagree, how to resolve it in a way where we both feel heard. And also, then it's a matter of many people avoiding the conversations that they should be having as well.
A lot of marriages break down because of that.
Mm-hmm.
People avoid addressing the elephant in the room, so to speak, sweep
Yes.
things under the carpet. What advice would you give to couples who are struggling with hearing each other? Because sometimes you speak or you talk to each other, but if there is already conflict, the other won't hear.
So when you're talking about really any relationship, but we can certainly address couples, and I think that the big thing is that you have to remember that there are two of you having the conversation. So as much as you have something on your mind and you want to be able to express it, it's very important that you remember that when you're finished speaking, that you listen to the other person and that you make sure that you're hearing them. Sometimes we are so wrapped up in our own thoughts, in what we want to say and or being right, that we hold our position. That's not being relational. Being relational means that you matter to me and how you feel matters to me, particularly if we are in a personal relationship. So how you feel matters. And if I'm committed to having a positive interaction that's productive, I'm going to take a moment and let you speak and actively listen with curiosity to what you're saying, not just to cut you off or to prove you wrong, but to try to put myself in your shoes as well. That's how we connect in all interactions. When we are connecting for the sake of something bigger, for the sake of our relationship, for the sake of our team or our organization, we interact with each other in a way that both people feel heard and can express themselves without feeling like they have to prove their point or win.
Now, a lot of communication skills start in the home as you're growing up with your parents, you're learning through observation. If you have come from a dysfunctional family where communication was not the thing, What can you do as an adult to address the deficit that you have?
So let me first say that I love that you're making this point, because one of the things that struck me the most when I first decided to take the work that I do and want to spread it around the whole world was because I realized that there's this somehow this misunderstanding, this misnomer that as human beings, as we become adults, somehow we know how to communicate. And, kind of thing like where we know how to be parents. Automatically, we're just supposed to know how to do this, how to have this amazing skill set. And if you think of how important communication is, the fact that, at least here in the States, there are no classes for this. And if you don't have parents who model it and talk to you and teach you, you can't learn it on your own. You have to rather learn it on your own and figure it out. Or maybe you just have a personality where you're a little bit easier in communication. It's just something that comes more naturally. But for most people, they really are functioning in a limited capacity because they're uncomfortable about at least one area of communication, whether it's bringing up a topic or navigating a difficult conversation or dealing with conflicts. One of the best things you can do is think, if it's an important conversation, is think ahead of time about what you want to say and think of a few highlights, a few takeaways that you want the other person to have. And even jot them down, one or two, maybe even three takeaways, but no more, because then it's too many. And approach the conversation by giving the other person the benefit of the doubt that they also want to have a good outcome, so that you're more open-minded, almost like you're going on a first date with someone when you're curious about them and you want to get along with them. And that's the approach you have, even if it's a challenging interaction. Approaching it from a positive perspective will give you a chance at a much better outcome. And then state your intention. I wanted to talk to you about this because this is important to me. And if you give me a minute to explain what I want to say, I think it'll make sense to you. Or then I want to hear what you have to say. But I think when something is important to you, have the conversation, think ahead of time of what you want to say and how you want the other person to feel, how you want to come across, and then plan a little bit for it so that you're a little bit more relaxed and you have a better chance, again, at having a positive outcome rather than blurting something out or just speaking without really thinking it through, because you might not have a chance to have another opportunity to say what you need to say.
The world is changing in terms of workplace communication.
Mm.
COVID has now forced people to work online, to work using Zoom, and managers are needing training on how to manage their staff when having online meetings and events. What tips, ideas would you give anyone in a management position? Because sometimes you have people in the workplace who are quiet, who are not outcoming.
Mhm.
How would you manage it on an online setting using Zoom or StreamYard?
I think the main point when we're talking about communication between management and people on their team or employees that work with them, it's the same thing whether you're on Zoom or not. There's a little bit of an extra piece of it when you're in an online conversation, but in general, you need to communicate. And there has to be an ability where there's open conversation, where the person who is a team member knows that they can share with you if something isn't working right, that they can make a mistake, and that it's an open communication environment where people feel like they belong and that they matter. So it's up to the manager. If it's on Zoom, sometimes you have to over communicate and double check, because someone can say, yeah, I'm fine, I'm great. And you don't really get a full sense of who they are and what's going on because you're not physically near the person. So you're missing some body language or some energy shifts that you might notice if you were sitting with them or you were near them in a meeting. So asking questions: how is it going? How can I support you? Is there something we can do better? Gives people an opportunity to give you feedback. I would suggest doing that whether you are in a remote relationship and or if you're in person. But it's up to the manager to create the environment where the person feels welcomed and comfortable sharing what they need to say or what they want to say.
Going forward into the future, Do you see the world going back to normal, or is this the new norm?
I have a column on Inc.com, and I waver about making these predictions because I thought we would have been back in the office, and I didn't write about it because I knew I really couldn't have known. And here we are with different situations that are in the news even today about companies that are requiring their staff to come back in full time, and people are revolting. So I think we are seeing the new normal, that companies are realizing that the power shift has changed, that employees are speaking up about the quality of their life and their ability to work remotely. I think the hybrid method is probably going to be more of the new normal, where people will be able to work from home and maybe come in for more group oriented meetings and or some social connections, so that they can feel a different kind of bonding, because you do lose some of those social connections with purely an online connection. And in those circumstances where it is purely online, to do things that are a little bit social online, whether it's having coffee together or creating some kind of fun contests and doing different things, sharing things for icebreakers, is also really good for companies to do, to not lose that social piece, even if people are all over the country. So I do think the new normal is going to be kind of what it is now. Maybe some companies will go to in person, but a lot of companies are satisfied with the way things are going.
Well, Debra, thank you so much for coming online this morning and sharing your wisdom with us. Look forward to staying connected with you. And if anybody wants to get in touch with you, we have your website scrolling at the bottom of the screen.
Perfect.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Her Story movement is attracting some very amazing women, bringing us nuggets of wisdom, knowledge, and ideas. So tune back again tomorrow when I come back with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. Debra, thank you again for the interview.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.